Misery, misery, misery. That's what you got. Especially for this review today. Let's get right down to it. How's it going, guys? My name is Zack, and I love discussing cinema and all things entertainment with you guys. And as always, I really do appreciate you guys clicking on the video today, and I really hope you enjoy your stay. Because here we are back with the Halloween special this year, and we are looking at one of my all-time favorite movies today, Misery. Yes, this is a movie that came out 30 years ago based off of a novel written by a man who I consider to be the greatest writer in the horror genre, Stephen King. This movie was directed by Rob Reiner at the peak of his prime, starring James Caan and Oscar winner Kathy Bates. After a serious car crash, novelist Paul Sheldon, played by Caan, is rescued by former nurse Annie Wilkes, played by Bates, who claims to be his #1 fan. Annie brings him to her remote cabin in Colorado to recover, where her obsession takes a dark turn when she discovers Sheldon is killing off her favorite character, Mystery Chastain, from his novels. As Sheldon devises plans for escape, Annie grows increasingly controlling, even violent, as she forces the author to shape his writing to suit her twisted fantasies. And guys, if for some reason you've never seen Misery, which if that's you, then why the hell not? But joking aside, there will be spoilers ahead in this review, just in case you've never seen Misery before. I fairly warned you. With that out of the way, let's talk about a movie that has become one of my all-time favorites. The more and more I rewatch this movie, the more I go back and revisit it, the more I love it. There is no denying that Misery is one of the best thrillers ever made, and Stephen King himself has actually gone on record saying that this is one of his favorite movie adaptations of one of his novels, if not his all-time favorite. Every shot is filled with the most tension they could possibly get out of any given moment, even from the opening frame, which is very simple, of a cigarette and a match, two very important items for later on in the film. Guys, the symbolism and the editing, better yet, for this film, it's among some of the best I've ever seen. There is such a frightening amount of variety hidden within this camera work used to instill fear within the audience. I mean, I'm talking Rob Reiner's use of extreme close-ups, dollying in on James Caan's face, and some nightmare-inducing wide shots towards the finish of this film. It is pristine, my friends. Speaking of pristine, I gotta talk about Rob Reiner a little bit, because his direction, every step of the way within Misery, it is absolutely phenomenal. And keep in mind, this guy was sneakily proving himself to be a master in the late 80s, early 90s. Case in point, The Princess Bride, which I did review on the channel about a year ago, as well as Stand By Me, another Stephen King adaptation, and another one of my all-time favorite movies. Let's face it, the dude was on a roll, and I would argue that Misery might be the most well-rounded movie out of this group that he was putting out. Not only is it well edited, but it's also extremely well written by William Goldman, who also penned The Princess Bride. This script not only creates an intense battle of wits between Paul and Annie, but there's also a shocking amount of comedy hidden between the lines that really helps to balance some things out. Most of which was brought upon by Richard Farnsworth as the local sheriff investigating the missing Paul Sheldon case, which, by the way, he was such a wonderful actor. May he rest in peace. I would argue that this is among his best work. He's got such a funny relationship with his wife, who also happens to be his deputy. She's trying to be comforting while he's on the job, but then he's like, no, you don't do that. It's a really funny dynamic. Now, speaking of an enjoyable dynamic, this film really is carried by a pure battle of wits, if I could borrow a Princess Bride term for a minute. That being Paul Sheldon versus Annie Wilkes. Kathy Bates' performance as Annie Wilkes in this movie, and keep in mind, she won an Oscar for this, which, here's a staggering statistic, this is still the only Stephen King adaptation to ever win an Oscar. Yeah, Shawshank Redemption did not win Best Picture in 1994, which, again, hot take, I'm still convinced that Forrest Gump was the right choice, even though I love Shawshank. But Kathy Bates' performance in this movie is still the only Oscar for any Stephen King adaptation. And going back to rewatch this movie, it is very well earned, and it's extremely well-deserved. Annie Wilkes is up there with Hannibal Lecter for me in terms of the scariest characters on film in history. Hopkins would similarly win an Oscar for Best Actor a year after this film's release. And she is able to teeter-totter between super sweet, caring nurse, and don't lie, you thought she was the nicest woman on the planet when you first met her. Oh, but oh boy, is that a red herring. God, when she loses it, ladies and gentlemen, Good lord. To put it simply, she goes cock-a-doodle for Cocoa Puffs. And trust me, Kathy Bates was the absolute right choice to take on this role, because with a different actor, it's very, very, very possible that this character could have gone way over the top. There are so many damn layers to this character. She is stoutly religious. She wears a cross around her neck, and she refuses to curse. Like, she absolutely will not curse, no matter how upset she gets. But yet, despite her faith, she can absolutely go bananas, and she can become this obsessed, psychotic superfan who's not mentally well. She can hobble you in seconds flat if you cross her. If you put her ceramic penguin in the wrong position, she will know. And she will break both of your ankles if she thinks you're getting better. And that's exactly what she does. She's not only keeping him sick, but she's finding new and improved ways to torture this poor guy. Chief of which being the infamous hobbling scene, which is so gruesome. It even leaves me squeamish, and I've dealt with a lot of really, really gruesome shit in the past. Every time I go back and rewatch this film, I always try and shut my eyes as tight as I can just so I don't see James Caan's ankle hobble all over the place like it's a saloon door. Yuck. Now, speaking of James Caan, I really don't want to overlook him because, in my opinion, this may be the most underrated performance in film history. And the proof is right there in the pudding. Kathy Bates won an Oscar off of this, and James Caan walked away with absolutely nothing, which is egregious thinking about it. Caan was the one guy who took this part after the likes of Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, Mel Gibson, and Harrison Ford turned this thing down. And I sort of get where they're coming from, which, again, this role can definitely feel a bit shackling for some actors. Literally speaking, because the character is bedridden for most of the film, and then when he's not, he's in a wheelchair. So this is a ballsy role for a lot of actors to take on. And I, for one, am so glad that James Caan was up for the challenge because he was perfect in this film. Because he not only sells the terror of the situation perfectly, he is always trying to think one step ahead of his adversary to find his way out of the house. And he eventually does, after he finishes Misery's Return, the novel that Annie Wilkes forces him to write, which is so despicable. Never do that. I mean, never force an artist to create something that they're not passionate about anymore. But when Annie Wilkes eventually, towards the end of this film, and this is getting into heavy spoiler territory, so tread lightly, when Annie Wilkes sees the manuscript in Paul's hands and he's about to light that thing on fire, she's finally aware that he's in control for the first time in this situation. And she's then beaten over the head with the very instrument she was torturing Paul with, the typewriter. This is one of the best finales in film history. If there's one thing Stephen King specializes in despite just plain scary, that would be revenge. A lot of his climaxes are extremely cathartic, and this one might be right at the top of the list of most satisfying. It really is a perfect way to wrap up a perfect movie because on a rewatch, guys, I really could not find a damn thing wrong with this. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Misery is one of the best thrillers ever made. It's one of the best Stephen King adaptations out there. I'm absolutely going to give Misery an A+. It's essential viewing for any fan of horror films, any fan of Stephen King. Misery is maximum tension from beginning to end with two absolutely mesmerizing leading performances. Of course, this is all just my opinion. What do you guys think of Misery? Do you love it as much as I do? Do you not like it? And I'm also wondering, which Stephen King film adaptation is your all-time favorite? Go ahead and make some noise for me down in the comments section below, and let's go ahead and have a further discussion, because I absolutely love doing this. I love talking about all things movies and all things entertainment. So if these sound like topics you want to keep up to date with me on, then do consider hitting that big red subscribe button down below as hard as you possibly can, because it's absolutely 100% free to you guys. It's really beneficial to help me get this content out there. You know what else is really helpful is if you hit that thumbs up on your way out. That would be tremendous, ladies and gentlemen. And as per, stay tuned for loads more exciting content hitting this channel very soon. Look out for my review of No Time to Die, which is hitting theaters this weekend, wrapping up the Daniel Craig Bond series. And that review might be a little bit later on in the weekend, so I appreciate your guys' patience in advance because I will be at SmackDown this Friday at the time of recording. But getting back to the Halloween special, keep your eyes peeled for the next entry into this playlist. This is gonna be a very interesting review coming up because I've already reviewed the sequel for it, but we're gonna be looking at Don't Breathe later on this week. You want to talk more about claustrophobic thrillers? Stay tuned, my friends. And you guys are the best. Again, I really am so thankful for your guys' support of the channel. channel up to this point. It is absolutely flooring to me. And with all that being said, back talk, commence!